The orbital station Viridia hung in the silent dark above the swirling amber clouds of the gas giant Kylos, a slender ring of silver and glass turning slowly against the star-flecked void. Inside its central chamber, delegates from 12 starfaring civilizations sat in a wide circle, their forms as varied as the worlds they represented. Some were tall and slender with skin like polished obsidian, others hunched and furred, a few little more than floating clouds of light held in containment fields. All watched the humans with guarded eyes. At the center of attention stood Daniel Hayes. He was not a soldier, not a general, not even a career diplomat. He was a history professor from Chicago, who had once written a well-regarded paper on post-war reconciliation, and for reasons he still did not fully understand. Earth's leadership had chosen him to speak for all of humanity. Beside him sat Lena Torres, quiet and sharp-eyed, her fingers resting lightly on a slim translation pad. She had spent 10 years studying alien languages and customs, and now, at 32, she was the only person in the room who could catch the subtle shifts in tone that might mean the difference between peace and war. The trouble had started 3 months earlier. A human exploration vessel, the Aurora's Resolve, had drifted off course during a routine jump near the Kalos system. Its crew, tired and overworked, mistook a Zenthari deep space buoy for space debris. In an attempt to clear their path, they fired a low-yield plasma charge. The buoy, actually a listening post monitoring cosmic radiation for signs of ancient stellar decay, was vaporized instantly. No lives were lost, but the Zenthari Concord considered it an act of profound disrespect. Their buoys were not just machines. They were memorials to long-dead astronomers, silent watchers in the endless night. Kyle Voren, the Zenthari delegate, had not spoken much during the first 2 days of talks. He sat perfectly still, his long gray fingers folded over his lap, his face a smooth mask of calm. But when he finally rose to address the chamber, the air seemed to grow colder. His voice was low, resonant, and carried without effort to every corner of the room. "You humans are new to the stars," he said. "You move quickly, speak loudly, and act without looking. That is not a crime. Youth is often clumsy. But you must learn. The galaxy is not empty. It is full of memories, boundaries, and laws older than your species." Daniel stepped forward, palms open in a gesture of peace he hoped translated across species. "We didn't know," he said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "We thought it was junk. We've offered full reparations, materials, labor, even help rebuilding the buoy. We're willing to accept observers on our ships. We just ask for a chance to learn." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some delegates leaned forward. Others pulled back into their seats. The representative from the Veln Collective, a hive-minded species with iridescent carapaces, clicked their mandibles in disapproval. "Ignorance is not an excuse," they chimed in unison. "Your kind has already disrupted 3 neutral trade lanes. You broadcast your music and news into sacred silence zones. You are loud, reckless, and untrained." Lena leaned toward Daniel and whispered, "They're scared of us. Not because we're dangerous yet, but because we might become it." Daniel nodded almost imperceptibly. He turned back to the chamber. "We're not perfect," he admitted, "but we're trying. We've grounded all non-essential deep space vessels. We've started mandatory xenocultural training for every pilot and engineer. We don't want to be enemies. We just want to belong." Kale studied him for a long moment. The Zenthari aged slowly. Kale was over 200 Earth years old, though he looked no older than 50. He had seen species rise and fall, some through war, others through arrogance, many through simple carelessness. Humanity reminded him of the Cathari, a race that had burned through 3 star systems before vanishing into self-made black holes. He did not want to see that happen again. After a pause that stretched like taffy, Kyle spoke again. "The Conquered will grant you provisional observer status. You may attend council sessions, but you may not vote. You will submit to quarterly audits of your fleet movements. You will not enter restricted zones without written permission, and if another incident occurs, any incident, you will be expelled from galactic space entirely." "Do you accept?" Daniel exhaled slowly. It wasn't full membership. It wasn't equality. But it was a door left open, however slightly. "We accept," he said. A ripple of approval moved through some delegates. Others remained still unconvinced. The Veln Collective hissed softly, but did not object. As the session adjourned and delegates began to rise, Kyle turned to Daniel one last time. His dark eyes held no anger, only a deep, weary sadness. "You speak well, human," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But words are easy. Actions are hard. And when your kind loses control, when fear or pride or rage takes hold, there will be no warning. No second chances." He paused, then added the words that would echo in Lena's mind for weeks to come. "May the heavens help you when humans go mad." Daniel frowned, unsure how to respond. "We're not mad," he said simply. Kyle gave the faintest shake of his head. "Not yet," he replied. "But the fire is in your bones. I have seen it before." He turned and walked away, his long robes whispering against the polished floor. Outside the chamber, in the quiet corridor lined with glowing vines from the Mycelian delegation's homeworld, Lena touched Daniel's arm. "He wasn't threatening us," she said quietly. "He was warning us." In his culture, that phrase, it's like saying, "Wow, God help you," but with more weight. It means they believe chaos is coming, and no one will be able to stop it. Daniel looked out through the transparent wall at the amber swirls of Kalos below. Earth felt impossibly far away. "Then we'll have to prove him wrong," he said. But even as he spoke, a message blinked on Lena's pad. It was from Earth Command. A fringe group calling themselves Sovereign Horizon had just hijacked a supply freighter near Mars and broadcast a declaration: "No alien laws on human ships." The captain had refused to stand down and fired warning shots at a Xanthari patrol drone. Lena's face went pale. "Daniel, it's already starting," he closed his eyes. The agreement wasn't even cold, and humanity was already testing its limits. The madness Kyle spoke of, it wasn't some distant storm. It was already stirring in the hearts of those who feared losing control. And out here among the stars, there would be no forgiving second chances. Back on Earth, the news of the agreement with the Xanthari conquered spread like wildfire. At first, people celebrated. Flags waved in city squares. Children drew pictures of starships shaking hands with aliens. And news anchors called it humanity's first real step into the galactic community. But the joy didn't last. Within days, a different voice began to rise, one louder, angrier, and wrapped in the language of freedom. His name was Cole Briggs. He wasn't a politician or a scientist. He was a former cargo pilot who had lost his ship during the early days of Earth's jump drive experiments. He'd spent years speaking at rallies, writing fiery posts online and building a following among those who felt left behind by Earth's rapid push into space. To them, the Concord wasn't a council of wise elders. It was a foreign power trying to control humanity before it even had a chance to stand on its own. "The Xanthari don't care about us," Cole said in a broadcast that reached over 200 million viewers. "They see us as children who need to be watched, punished, and silenced. But we're not children. We're humans, and we decide our own rules." His words found fertile ground. In towns where shipyards had closed because of new Concord safety rules. In colonies where supply lines were delayed by inspection protocols. In schools where kids were now taught alien customs instead of Earth history, people began to listen. Protests formed. Some were peaceful. Others turned violent. A Xanthari cultural liaison visiting Geneva had his transport vandalized. Graffiti appeared on embassy walls. "No alien judges and Earth for Earthlings." Daniel Hayes watched it all from his small apartment in Montreal. He'd returned home hoping to help explain the agreement, to calm fears, to build trust. But every time he spoke on the news, Cole Briggs would appear right after, calling him a traitor, a puppet, a man who'd sold out humanity for a seat at an alien table. Lena Torres worked quietly behind the scenes, meeting with local leaders, teachers, even street artists, trying to show that cooperation didn't mean surrender. She organized town halls where Xanthari data, translated into simple terms, was shared. Maps of safe jump corridors, lists of protected zones, even recordings of Cale Voren speaking about the importance of patience. But her efforts were drowned out by the noise of outrage. Then came the Aurora's Resolve incident. Again, this time, it wasn't a mistake. The ship, now under new command, had been seized by a crew loyal to Sovereign Horizon. They'd ignored 3 direct orders to halt near the Veil Nebula, a region the Concord had marked as off-limits due to unstable quantum fields. When a Xanthari patrol vessel moved to intercept, the Aurora's Resolve fired first. Not a warning shot. A full plasma burst that crippled the patrol ship's engine array. No one died, but the message was clear. Some humans would not be told what to do. The Concorde responded instantly. All human vessels were grounded within the Sol system. Trade permits were frozen. And the captain of the Aurora's Resolve, a man named Rick Danner, was arrested by Xanthari peacekeepers and taken to Viridia Station to stand trial under Concord law. On Earth, the reaction was explosive. Cole Briggs stood on the roof of an old launch tower in Nevada, wind whipping through his jacket, and declared, "They've taken one of ours. Now they think they can judge us. Well, I say this, if they want a war, let them come. But they'll find out real quick that humans don't kneel." Crowds roared. Recruitment for Sovereign Horizon tripled overnight. Even some members of the United Earth Directorate began to waver, fearing civil unrest more than alien judgment. Daniel knew they were walking a razor's edge. He requested an emergency meeting with the Earth Council, but was told his views were no longer helpful. Lena tried to contact Kyle Voran directly, but her messages were returned unread. The Concord had closed its doors. Worse, the Xanthari weren't the only ones watching. Other species, the Veln, the Mycelians, even the quiet, ancient Urathi, had begun pulling their envoys from Earth. They didn't say it outright, but their silence spoke volumes. Humanity was becoming too unstable to trust. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows of their safe house in rural Oregon, Daniel sat across from Lena at a small wooden table. Marcus Boone, a former freighter pilot who'd once flown with Rick Danner, leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He'd come to them after quitting Sovereign Horizon, disgusted by how quickly it had turned from protest to aggression. "They're painting us as monsters," Marcus said, voice rough. "But we're not. Most of us just want to fly, to explore, to live. Why can't the Conquered see that?" "Because they only see the loudest voices," Lena replied softly. "And right now Cole Briggs is shouting over everyone else." Daniel rubbed his temples. "We have to show them the other side of us. The quiet majority. The teachers, the engineers, the medics who patch up alien visitors without asking for thanks. But how? No one's listening." Marcus straightened. "Then we make them listen. Not with speeches. With action." The next day, a group of Earth medics, volunteers from Nairobi, Jakarta, and Buenos Aires, boarded a Concorde-approved transport and flew to a refugee station near Proxima Centauri. A solar flare had damaged a mycelian habitat ring, and dozens were injured. The humans worked for 72 hours straight, treating burns, stabilizing atmospheres, even singing lullabies to frightened mycelian young. The Concord broadcast the footage galaxy-wide. For a moment, the tide seemed to turn. Some alien delegates softened. Cale Voran was seen nodding during a private briefing. But back on Earth, Cole Briggs called the medics useful idiots and accused them of begging for scraps from alien masters. His followers stormed a training center where pilots were learning Concord protocols and set fire to the simulators. Daniel watched the footage on a cracked tablet, his heart heavy. "They're not just fighting the Concorde," he said. "They're fighting us. The part of us that wants to grow up." Lena placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we protect that part, even if it means standing alone." That night, a message arrived, not from the Concorde, but from a low-orbit satellite owned by a neutral trader. It contained coordinates, a time, and 2 words: "Be ready." Marcus recognized the signature. It was from an old friend in Earth intelligence, a woman named Priya Nair, who had gone dark weeks ago after leaking evidence that Sovereign Horizon was being funded by black market arms dealers. "She thinks something big is coming," Marcus said, "and she's scared." Daniel looked out at the stars through the rain-streaked window. He thought of Cale's warning. The madness wasn't just coming. It was already here, wearing human faces, speaking human words, and tearing their world apart from the inside. And if they didn't stop it soon, the heavens wouldn't just watch. They would act. The silence from Earth intelligence was broken not with a message, but with fire. Deep in the Proxima Centauri system, a hidden Xanthari data nexus, used to monitor stellar drift and ancient cosmic echoes, suddenly went dark. Alarms blared across 3 sectors. When Concord engineers arrived, they found the core servers melted, the outer shell scorched by human-grade plasma incendiaries, and 2 Xanthari technicians dead inside, their containment suits breached by shrapnel. At first, no one claimed responsibility, but within hours, fragments of data began leaking across the dark nets of Earth. Grainy footage showed masked figures planting charges, their uniforms bearing the jagged sun symbol of Sovereign Horizon. Then came the audio. A voice, distorted but unmistakably Cole Briggs's, declaring, "We won't be watched like criminals in our own sky. If they want secrets, let them dig through ashes." What the attackers didn't know, what no one on Earth knew, was that the data they stole was fake, a decoy, planted weeks earlier by Xanthari intelligence after detecting unusual human signal patterns near the system. The files they broadcast as proof of a conquered plot to sterilize Earth's biosphere were carefully crafted lies, designed to test how far humanity would go when afraid, and humanity had failed the test. On Viridia Station, Kyle Voren stood before the full Concord Council, his usual calm replaced by something colder. He did not raise his voice. He did not gesture. He simply said, "They have crossed the threshold. The madness has begun." The vote was swift, unanimous. Humanity's provisional status was revoked. A containment cordon, known in old Xanthari texts as the Veil of Silence, was activated around the entire Sol system. No ships in, no ships out. All human communications beyond the asteroid belt were jammed. The message was clear. You are quarantined until you prove you are not a threat to yourselves or others. On Earth, chaos erupted. Stock markets crashed. Off-world colonies lost contact with home. Food shipments from orbital farms stalled. Panic spread faster than reason. Cole Briggs, now operating from a fortified base in the Arizona desert, declared the cordon an act of war. He rallied what remained of Sovereign Horizon's fleet, mostly retrofitted mining rigs and old defense, drones, and announced a liberation strike on the nearest conquered blockade point near Jupiter. Daniel Hayes watched the broadcast from a hidden bunker beneath the Canadian Rockies. He, Lena, Marcus, and Priya Nair, the Earth intelligence officer who had warned them, sat in dim light, faces lit by flickering screens. Priya had gone underground after her superiors ordered her to stop investigating Sovereign Horizon's ties to military contractors. She'd brought with her encrypted logs, ship manifests, and proof that Briggs's inner circle had been planning the Proxima attack for months. They wanted this, Priya said, her voice tight. They knew the Conquered would react hard. They're using fear to build an army. Lena scrolled through news feeds from cities across the globe. In Mumbai, people smashed alien-made communication relays. In Berlin, students marched holding signs that read, "Let us speak." In Lagos, a group of engineers tried to build a jump-capable shuttle from scrap, hoping to break the cordon. Hope and rage were twisting together into something dangerous. "We can't let Briggs speak for all of us," Daniel said. "But who will listen to us now?" Marcus stood by the window, staring at the snow-covered pines outside. "The Concord doesn't care about our politics. To them, we're one species, one problem. If Briggs fires on their ships, they'll see it as humanity attacking. And then..." He didn't finish. They all knew. The Veil of Silence wasn't just a blockade. It was the first step toward total isolation, or worse, sterilization. Priya tapped a key, pulling up a star map. "There's one ship they haven't impounded, the Wayfarer. It's old, slow, and technically listed as non-operational in Earth logs. But I helped retrofit its core last year. It can make the jump to Viridia. If we fly dark, no signals, no ID ping." Lena turned. "You're talking about going back. To the station. After everything." "Yes," Priya said. "Not to beg. To show them we're not all like Briggs. That there are still humans who choose reason over rage." Daniel looked at each of them. Lena, whose quiet strength had held them together. Marcus, who'd walked away from his old life to do what was right. Priya, who risked everything to uncover the truth. They were not soldiers, not heroes in the grand sense. Just people who refused to let fear win. "We'll need supplies," Marcus said. "Fuel, food, a way to bypass the cordon's sensor net." "I know a smuggler in Titan's docks," Priya replied. "He owes me a favor." "And if the Concord shoots us on sight?" Lena asked. "Then we die trying," Daniel said simply. "But if we stay here and do nothing, we die anyway, slowly in silence, while the galaxy forgets we ever reached for the stars." Preparations began that night. Under cover of a solar storm that masked their energy signatures, they slipped out of the bunker and made their way to a hidden hangar near the old Calgary spaceport. The Wayfarer sat in the shadows, its hull patched with mismatched plates, its engines humming faintly like a sleeping beast. As they loaded crates of rations and water, Marcus paused. You really think they'll listen? Daniel climbed into the cockpit, running his hand over the worn controls. I don't know. But Kale said the heavens would help us when we go mad. Maybe they're waiting to see if we can find our way back to sanity first. Outside, the northern lights shimmered green against the black sky, a final gift from Earth before they left it behind. The engines whined to life. The hangar doors groaned open, and with no fanfare, no farewell, the Wayfarer lifted into the cold, quiet dark, carrying 4 humans and the fragile hope that not all of their kind had gone mad. The Wayfarer drifted through the outer edge of the Sol system like a ghost. Its engines ran cold, its lights were off, and its hull was wrapped in thermal blankets stolen from a derelict supply depot near Saturn. Inside, the air was stale, the coffee long gone, and the only sound was the soft hum of life support and the occasional creak of metal as the ship adjusted to the void. Daniel sat in the pilot's seat, eyes fixed on the star map, glowing faintly on the cracked display. Marcus was beside him, hands resting lightly on the manual thrusters, ready to kill all power if a Concord patrol swept nearby. In the rear cabin, Lena and Priya sorted through their cargo, not weapons, but data. Hours of footage, schoolchildren in Oslo building model Concord ships, farmers in Kenya sharing water with stranded mycelium botanists, engineers in Buenos Aires repairing a Zenthari comms relay after a storm. Small acts, quiet acts, but human acts. They had slipped past the cordon 3 days earlier, using a trick Priya learned from old smuggler tales, riding the magnetic tail of a solar flare to mask their heat signature. It had worked, but barely. A Zenthari scout ship had passed within 2 kilometers, its sensors sweeping the dark. They'd held their breath, hearts pounding, until it moved on. Now Viridia Station loomed ahead, a silver ring against the amber swirl of Kalos. Getting close would be harder. The station was on high alert. Patrols doubled. Every signal scanned, every particle analyzed. We can't hail them, Lena said, her voice low. They'll shoot us down before we finish the first word. We don't hail, Priya replied. We broadcast. On the old cultural exchange frequency, the one Kale used during the first talks. It's not monitored by security, only by scholars, Marcus frowned. And if no one's listening? Then we die trying, Daniel said again, the same words he'd spoken back on Earth. But this time they felt heavier. Priya patched into the comm system, her fingers flying over the keys. She loaded their message, a short loop of the footage, Lena's voice explaining each clip in clear, simple Zenthari, and a final line from Daniel. We are not all mad. Please see us. She hit send. For 10 long minutes, nothing happened. The ship floated, silent and small, in the shadow of the station. Then a single light blinked on the station's docking ring. Not red, not blue. Green. They're opening a bay, Marcus whispered, disbelief in his voice. No weapons detected, came a voice over the comm, calm, female, speaking accented but clear English. Identify yourselves. This is the human vessel Wayfarer, Daniel said, keeping his tone steady. We come in peace. We ask only to speak. A pause. Then, dock at Bay 7, power down all systems. You will be met by unarmed personnel. They did as they were told. The ship slid into the bay like a tired bird returning to its nest. As the airlock hissed and pressurized, the 4 of them stood in silence, dressed in plain gray jumpsuits, hands empty, faces open. The door opened. Standing there was not a soldier, not an enforcer, but a young Zenthari scholar, tall with soft eyes and a data satchel slung over one shoulder. Behind her stood 2 others, also unarmed. You are Daniel Hayes, she said, not as a question. I am. She nodded. Delegate Vorin wishes to see you, alone. Lena started to protest, but Daniel raised a hand. It's okay, he said. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be gone. He followed the scholar through winding corridors lined with living vines and soft light. The station felt calm, ordered, ancient, nothing like the frantic energy of Earth. At last, they reached a quiet chamber overlooking the gas giant below. Kale Vorin stood by the window, his back turned. You came back, Kale said without turning. Most species, once quarantined, rage or hide. You chose to return. We had to try, Daniel said. Kale finally faced him. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something new. Curiosity, perhaps. Your broadcast. It showed kindness, but also weakness. In the galaxy, kindness is often mistaken for fear. It's not weakness, Daniel said. It's choice. Anyone can be cruel when scared. It takes strength to be kind when you're afraid. Kyle studied him for a long moment. Then he gestured to a table where a small device sat glowing softly. This contains the full logs from the Proxima attack. We know now it was not sanctioned by your government. We also know Cole Briggs has declared himself leader of a breakaway faction. You are not united. No, Daniel admitted. We're broken, but not lost. There are millions who reject what he's doing. They just have no voice. Kyle walked to the window again. The Conqueror does not deal in fractions. You are one species, one responsibility. If part of you burns, the whole may be consumed. I know, Daniel said. That's why we're here. Not to ask for mercy, but to offer proof that the fire hasn't spread everywhere. Before Kale could reply, an alarm chimed softly. The scholar rushed in, speaking quickly in Zenthari. Kale's posture stiffened. What is it? Daniel asked. Briggs, Kale said, turning to him, his voice grim. He has launched 3 armed vessels toward the cordon. He calls it Operation Dawnbreak. He intends to shatter the veil. Daniel's blood ran cold. He'll get everyone killed. Perhaps, Kyle said. Or perhaps he will force our hand. The Conquered Council meets in 1 hour. Your fate and your species will be decided then. He looked at Daniel, really looked at him, as if seeing humanity for the first time not as a threat, but as a question. You may speak before the council, but choose your words carefully. They will be your last, Daniel nodded. He thought of Lena waiting in the bay, of Marcus checking the ship's seals, of Priya analyzing Zenthari law in the hopes of finding a loophole. He thought of the children in Oslo, the farmers in Kenya, the quiet acts that never made headlines. He had one chance, one voice, and he would use it not to defend but to show. As they walked toward the council chamber, the station hummed around them, steady and sure. Outside, the stars watched, silent. And somewhere far behind, in the quarantined dark of soul, madness sailed toward war, while 4 humans carried the fragile weight of hope into the heart of judgment. The council chamber was silent as Daniel stepped onto the central platform. 12 delegates sat in their places, their forms still, their eyes fixed on him. Kyle Vorin stood to the side, arms folded, his expression unreadable. Lena, Marcus, and Priya waited near the entrance, not allowed to speak but permitted to witness. The air felt thick, heavy with the weight of a decision that would shape humanity's future, or end it. Daniel took a breath. He did not begin with excuses. He did not plead. Instead, he nodded to Priya. She activated a small projector they had smuggled in. Images filled the air above the chamber, not of warships or protests, but of everyday life. A classroom in Jakarta where children learned Zenthari star songs, a hospital in Rio where human doctors worked alongside mycelian healers, a farmer in Nebraska sharing water with a stranded Velen scout whose ship had broken down during a dust storm. These are not heroes, Daniel said, his voice calm. They are ordinary people. They don't make headlines. They don't lead armies, but they choose every day to reach out instead of strike out. He paused, then added, We know what Cole Briggs has done. We condemn it. Not because the Concord demands it, but because it is wrong. Fear does not justify violence, and anger does not make us free. The Velen delegates shifted, their carapace clicking softly. Words are easy. They chimed in unison. Actions matter. You're right, Daniel said. So here is our action. We offer full cooperation. Not because we are weak, but because we understand now that space is not empty. It is full of others who have a right to peace. We will help track Briggs's ships. We will share all data on his movements. And if our own people must stop him, we will. Lena stepped forward then, though she had not been called. No one stopped her. In Zenthari tradition, she said, speaking slowly and clearly, there is a story about a young star that burned too bright, too fast. It threatened to consume its neighbors. But instead of destroying it, the elder stars surrounded it, not to cage it, but to guide its fire until it learned to shine without burning. That is what we ask, not to be punished, but to be guided. A murmur moved through the chamber. Even the Urathi, ancient and silent for centuries, tilted their crystalline heads slightly. Kale finally spoke. You ask for trust, but trust is earned over time. You have given us only chaos. And we are trying to fix it, Marcus said, stepping up beside Lena. I flew with men like Briggs once. I thought freedom meant doing whatever you wanted. But real freedom means choosing what's right, even when it's hard. That's what we're doing now, Priya added. We've analyzed your laws, your history. You've given second chances before, to the Cathari after their civil war, to the Mycelians after the Bloom crisis. You believe species can change. So do we. The chamber fell quiet again. The delegates exchanged glances, some skeptical, others thoughtful. Kale turned to the council and spoke in low Zinthari. The discussion was brief but intense. Then the head delegate, a tall silver-skinned being from the Andari League, rose. The Conquered has decided, she said in clear, measured English. Humanity will not be expelled. The veil of silence will remain, but it will be adjusted. A joint oversight committee will be formed. 6 human representatives, 6 Concord members. You will work together to monitor fleet activity, resolve disputes, and guide your species through this difficult age. Relief washed over Daniel, but he did not smile. He knew this was not victory. It was a chance. The committee will have real authority, he asked. Yes, Kale said. Including the power to sanction rogue elements like Briggs on behalf of both Earth and the Conquered. Daniel nodded. Then we accept. The decision was made. Briggs's fleet was already nearing the cordon, but now Earth loyalists, backed by Conquered intelligence, moved to intercept. Within days, 2 of his ships surrendered after their crews learned the truth about the fake Proxima files. The third, Briggs's flagship, tried to run. It was disabled by a combined Earth-Conquered task force near the edge of the asteroid belt. Briggs was taken into custody not by aliens, but by his own people. Back on Viridia, as the Wayfarer prepared to return home, Kale found Daniel on the observation deck. The gas giant Kylos glowed below, calm and endless. You surprised us, Kale said. We surprised ourselves, Daniel replied. Kale looked at him for a long moment. The heavens heard you, he said quietly. Now make sure your own people do too. Daniel nodded. He thought of the long road ahead, rebuilding trust, healing divisions, teaching a frightened world that strength and kindness could coexist. It would not be easy, but for the first time in months it felt possible. As the Wayfarer left Viridia behind and turned toward the distant blue dot of Earth, Lena placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. We did it, she said. No, he said softly. We started it. And in the quiet hum of the ship, surrounded by friends who had risked everything for a fragile hope, Daniel Hayes knew that humanity's real test was not surviving the stars, but learning how to live among them without losing its soul.